Welcome to Science Fiction Snob. This is a segment where I talk about classic sci-fi books. The object of this video is to provide a quick overview for those of you who are newer science fiction readers and may not have been exposed to the glory of the Golden Age. If you are trapped in the present sci-fi hell of lifeless and unimaginative Star Wars, Star Trek, and Halo books, then this segment's for you. And just note that I highly recommend the following books. Today I'm going to overview the last three books of Frank Herbert's Dune Saga: God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune. As I mentioned in part one of this video, recently a new Dune movie just began filming in March and is set for release in November of 2020. It is a very high-profile cast and crew. See the other videos on my channel for more information about the upcoming Dune movie, as well as a re-release of the Dune board game and Dune-related video game stuff. And see part one of this video if you want to hear my overview of Dune, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune. And it goes without saying that if you're going to start reading Frank Herbert's Dune Saga, start with Dune. So let's get into the books. The fourth book in the saga is God Emperor of Dune, and it was published in 1981 by Frank Herbert. A quick, brief synopsis of the book. Leto II has become the human hybrid worm, and he has ruled the known universe for the last 3,500 years. The death of all the other sandworms on Dune and Leto's control of the spice has allowed him complete command of the civilization. The great houses have been disbanded, and all authority pretty much resides with Leto and his female army of fish speakers, led by a string of Duncan, Idaho Golas. Humans reside at a near medieval level of technology and stagnation. Dune has been transformed into a lush forest, with the exception of one small desert area where Leto sometimes vacations. The story in the book revolves around Sinona, who's an Atreides through Leto's sister, and her organized rebellion against Leto's rule. The fifth book is Heretics of Dune, first published in 1984. In it, 1,500 years have passed since the end of Leto II's rule, and humanity is firmly on the golden path. 3,500 years of forced stagnation has caused the scattering, which is an explosion of humanity onto the rest of the universe. Now, some from the scattering are returning and looking to conquer the old empire. The Bene Gesserit are forced to deal with those who are returning and must push humanity towards a future where we are free from the threat of extinction. Chapter House Dune was published in 1985, and it takes place immediately after Heretics of Dune. Chapter House furthers the plot from Heretics as the Bene Gesserit try to deal with the honored matres, who are their counterparts from the scattering and have all but taken over the old empire at this point. The book ends with a cliffhanger, which will be resolved in the books Hunters of Dune and Sandworms of Dune. Again, I don't want to be too detailed about the books. I don't want to spoil them. So that's a very quick overview of the last three books of Frank Herbert's Dune Saga. Now, a bit about my thoughts on the books. Of all six books, I think that, I don't know, this is maybe a little bit unusual, but I think God Emperor of Dune is my favorite. And I tend to enjoy the last three books of the series more than the first three, which probably is an unpopular opinion. It's very much my personal view. The reason being is that I really enjoy science fiction stories that, set up some sort of, social situation or society, and then getting to see how the author thinks that society might evolve over, a long period of time. I find that part very interesting. So, the first three books take place in a very short time frame, relatively, while the fourth book is 3,500 years from the first three, and then the last two are another 1,500 years from that. So I very much enjoy seeing how Herbert thinks that his society might have evolved once on the golden path. The second thing of that is that the Golden Path is always referred to in the first three books, and I was always very, it's not detailed. There's no, it's just something about a golden path. You're like, what the heck's that about? It's very interesting to see, what Herbert, how he viewed the golden path, and we see that, there's a lot of references to it in the God Emperor of Dune. We don't really see what the golden path actually is until after God Emperor of Dune, though. I guess technically the events of God Emperor of Dune and the setup before that is actually putting, getting humanity onto the path in a sense, so that, when Leto dies, then they can scatter and, we can be ensured that humanity will survive. So that's it's a very personal reason why I like the last four books. It's nothing really to do with the quality of the writing or anything, and I admit that probably the majority of Dune fans would enjoy the first three books of the series more, because because it focuses on characters that they can relate to. Paul's son and daughter, and a lot of the characters the same. While in the last four there are new characters added that people don't relate to, with of course the exception of Duncan Idaho. But for me, that's not really as big a deal. I find the new characters that are introduced are quite good. They're just as developed by Herbert in the books, I find, and I quite enjoy I always was interested in the Bene Gesserit and that secret society thing, and seeing how they evolved, and how they are one of the few groups that survive God Emperor of Dune and are still relatively intact by the end of his saga. All the other groups have been sort of stripped away and have fallen by the wayside. So I've always been interested in the Bene Gesserit, and to see them, then sort of take over the protection of humanity. That's very interesting. I also find it interesting what they do with Miles Teague in that character as well, and he's one of my favorite characters of the books, and he is in the last two books as well. So those are some of my thoughts on the last three books of the Dune saga. And again, I highly recommend this series. Herbert is one of the greatest science fiction writers of the 20th century, in my view, and you can't really call yourself a science fiction fan or science fiction snob if you have not read at least Dune, but preferably the entire 6 books in the series. I hope this has given you enough information to encourage you to read Dune. A lot of Dune-related material will be coming out in the next few years. I'll be following it, so follow the channel, subscribe if you want to be first and hear my take on whatever information comes up. Thank you to those who subscribed, and I appreciate it. And if you want to leave comments on any of the videos, I read all the comments, and I love to discuss the books and other science fiction related stuff. I will stay on the channel and watch, and I'll soon be covering the Brian Herbert, Kevin Anderson books, which extends the Dune saga, sort of the Dune expanded universe. So until next time, this is Science Fiction Snob.